all know what they saw. They saw what we saw. They saw the frail elderly man who needed help getting off the stage. They're just too chicken shit to tell us about it because they accurately deduce that he could still be the Democratic nominee and they don't want to ding him up. Maybe you give Barbara a pass. Who gives a damn what this singer saw or says? But you know what? Jimmy Kimmel happens to be employed by ABC, which happens to have a rather large news organization. And he has been one of President Trump's most vocal critics. Where are you, Jimmy? On vacation? Not good enough. You can still use your thumbs to send out a tweet. You could set the record straight right now, but you won't.
This isn't your typical celebrity feud. It's a verbal demolition derby, and Jimmy forgot his helmet. What did he say that set them off? It's messier than a Twitter meltdown. What happens when Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly tag team roast duty, and Jimmy Kimmel is the unfortunate piñata spoiler? It's less late-night comedy and more career CPR from ego-crushing zingers to truth bombs with extra spice. It's a 3-alarm fire, and Kimmel's the marshmallow.
All of a sudden, the ideology shifts because so many people are compromised by this very thing that we were talking about before. The very thing that they use to control the media in terms of the news, they use it to control the media in terms of late-night talk shows and monologues as well. It's the same influence because they're the same sponsors. The same people are spending the same money on the same networks. And it has an impact. If it affects your livelihood and affects your future and your ability to do this thing that you love doing, which is hosting a talk show, and you're doing it on a network that is paid for by that money, guess what? That affects...
In the era of late-night television and carefully manicured authenticity, what happened is that Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly have theories, but they didn't exactly whisper them into thin air. Jimmy Kimmel was the jester-in-chief, the guy who used to trade in beer-chugging skits and bikini bounce houses. Fast forward to today, and he's practically the Dalai Lama of Hollywood, clutching pearls over moral crises with the same hands that once high-fived guys for fart jokes.
Just this past 2 weeks, they had the Kennedy Center honors the other night where Joe Biden couldn't say Dionne Warwick. He kept calling her Diane, and he didn't know who Barry Gibb was. He kept calling him Billy. You know who else was honored? At the Kennedy Center. You know who else? Billy Crystal. Just FYI, do you know who once opened up the Academy Awards in full blackface?
Oh,
Billy
yeah.
Crystal. Billy Crystal. And do you know who's going to be hosting the Academy Awards this year? Jimmy Kimmel. Do you know who's worn blackface repeatedly and spoken inner city sort of urban accent saying she needs to darn those socks? Jimmy Kimmel as Oprah, as a fat-suited, black-faced, darning socks Oprah. Now, if you are of the left, that's fine. If you are of the right and happen to just say, hey, people used to wear blackface and nobody freaked out about it, you get...
Enter first. Juggernaut and full-time human bulldozer of sugar-coated drivel, Joe Rogan is an MMA pundit and podcast host. Joe Kimmel is more than simply a late-night presenter. He is an artifact, a remnant of a period when humor meant something, other than upholding moral standards. Rogers doesn't tread carefully when responding to criticism. Instead, he charges in like a caffeine-fueled rhino with a grudge against phoniness.
That sort of self-censorship and the idea of being a more empathetic person is a good thing, right? But as long as it's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, the problem with that kind of stuff is it continues to go in the same direction where more and more things become forbidden and toxic.
In Rogers' view, spiritual offense is more important than personal grudges. See when you base your career on being the average person, the guy who says what others won't. Kimmel's transformation into Hollywood's moral concierge is like finding out your favorite dive bar now offers gluten-free kale shots with inspirational sayings. It's treachery with a laugh track that reads like a satirical sketch of Kimmel's development or devolution, depending on your seating arrangement.
Elon Musk joking around about my pronouns are prosecute Fauci. Jimmy Kimmel made a tweet back to him. He said, your pronouns are ass and hole. Which is pretty funny. But then...
Did he really?
Yes. And so then I read that, and there was people saying, please don't joke about pronouns. It's transphobic to joke about pronouns. So they were chiding him for participating in a joke about pronouns.
So Jimmy Kimmel was doing it. He was doing it too.
Yeah, he was doing it.
The man who formerly rode the comedic line like a rodeo bull now holds a golden moral compass that conveniently points in the direction of applause. Yes, he was doing it too. In contrast, Roger's world is messy, chaotic, sometimes insane, but always brutally real. It's a place where people disagree without erupting into moral flame. The rebranding is obvious to anyone who smells it. It's not just a pivot, it's a full-blown career Botox injection, and nothing says I'm still edgy like repeating the same old political sermon between jokes your HR department approved. Kimmel appears to have chosen the safety net of Hollywood orthodoxy in the meantime. Rogan observes a man who traded in his sense of humor for Instagram influence, which was once surprising but is now completely bland. The late-night environment Kimmel lives in isn't just sanitized. It's bleached, scrubbed, and gift-wrapped for the algorithm. It's like watching a punk rocker from the 90s become a Whole Foods brand ambassador. Sure, he still makes jokes, but now they come with a waiver, and a trigger warning comedy that used to land like a punch now arrives like a corporate memo. Furthermore, when he looks around, he notices clones. Late night has turned into a daycare center for ideological thinkers, with Cord's Kimmel, who is regrettably the head babysitter. The jokes, politics, and punchlines are all the same.
Sunday morning show with Stephanopoulos into the evening Academy Awards broadcast with Kimmel, and ABC elevating, the blackface loving Kimmel. They, at the same time, fired Chris Harrison, host of The Bachelor, for trying to defend one contestant on The Bachelorette for saying, gee, I know I went to this antebellum party, a couple years ago. I guess I didn't see anything wrong with it. And all he said was, are we judging her by today's standards, or are we judging her by, old standards, whatever. He was basically trying to say, are we being too hard on her? Got fired. Chris Harrison has to be fired by ABC. I don't know why, because he's not a committed leftist, because he's not out there more saying all the terrible things about Republicans that Jimmy Kimmel says. So this is them saying, we get it. We're an ally, right? And I guess maybe they're trying to make up with their racist past without ever...
If Rogan's criticisms are given with a sledgehammer, Megyn Kelly will now glide in with a precise stroke, cueing the transitional music. Kimmel is a prime cadaver, and Rogan views Kimmel as a fallen comedian. Kelly's strategy is more akin to an autopsy surgical procedure and is completely unflinching. She doesn't need comedy specials or bro jokes. She comes armed with a scalpel-branded media hypocrisy. Kelly views the media as a voice for an industry that only acts concerned when the numbers make sense. Not a clown, but rather a well-dressed sock. Kimmel's change in her world is not only bothersome, it is calculated. The man didn't change. Instead, he turned around, saw the winds of political virtue blowing, and attached a sail to his suit using duct tape. Kelly has little time for false empathy, particularly when it's combined with a past that vanishes in the mist of selective indignation. She draws attention to the magic trick that Kimmel uses from a pedestal built on the very behavior he now condemns, and Hollywood applauds him not because they believe him, but because he's helpful. Kimmel, once the king of crude, is now the moral sheriff, but only when it's safe. It's funny how redemption arcs always coincide with contract renewals, almost like they're scheduled.
Hypocrisy is alive and well amongst these sanctimonious leftists. From Kimmel to De Niro to Stephanopoulos, they want you to believe they're better than you, more virtuous, more decent. But we all know the truth. They lie. They sin. They do the very things they accuse you of, and the things they say they would never do. Evil things, like try to destroy people based on feigned outrage, from which they spare their own.
While Kelly analyzes the PR games and publicist-fueled apologies, she also dismantles the incentives. The media loves a redemption tale as long as the redeemed joins the choir and Jimmy is essentially the lead soprano, but this is where it gets really good. Kimmel receives a pass because he switched sides, not because he is sorry. It's about market alignment, not morality. Morality is optional, but narrative allegiance is required, so now you have two very different criticisms of the same man. Roger pointed out the plastic shell that had housed a comedian. Kelly draws attention to the empty suit behind the media curtain, and both are, in their different ways, horribly true. Roger observes a once authentic voice strangled by approval. Addiction and Studio Gloss. The oddest tag team in cultural analysis is formed by Kelly, who perceives a strategic chameleon that strategically changes its shape just enough to endure each new outrage cycle. One submitting a forensic report, the other striking a bat. The popcorn is the only item lacking. The comedy itself isn't the problem anymore. Rather, it's the fact that Kimmel, who once pushed limits, now babysits them. His monologues focus more on demonstrating that he completed his homework than they do on making jokes.
They were saying that his tweet is transphobic.
Do you think in that case, do you think that's him or a writer? Can't you tell?
Jimmy Kimmel?
Yeah.
No, it's him, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
good. That's a good one.
He's a comic.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, he used to host The Man Show. I mean, he's done some pretty outrageous shit back in the day,
Yeah.
you know, for hee-hees and haw-haws.
No, that's a good joke on top of a good joke.
Yeah, it's a good joke.
However, viewers tuned in to laugh, not to be graded, and somewhere along the line, the jokes became sermons and the punchlines became TED Talks with applause signs. That's exactly what Rogan and Kelly get at. The irony of it all is that a comedian who once mocked hypocrisy now stands for scripted outrage. There's no rebellion left, just rebranding. In the great irony of modern media, the more Kimmel preaches, the more hollow it sounds, not because morality is bad, but rather because it's so obviously manufactured. Every tearful speech and carefully crafted outrage is prepackaged for social media and its sincerity by committee. So what's the harm? For one thing, late-night TV has turned into an echo chamber that is so loud that it is impossible to hear itself. From his leather-padded bunker of chaos and wonders, Roger observes, as comedy turns into a PowerPoint show, Kelly enjoying an espresso while using her media. As the war room repeatedly witnesses the same clown car collision, Kimmel is trapped in the middle and says nothing. But he doesn't have to, since his quiet speaks louder than his monologues, because, in the end, his words aren't as important as the fact that he's turned into a punchline without any preface. An actor in a show that no one finds amusing anymore with a brand contract and a moral compass.
We'll tell you, he's not the worst. The Daily Show has the worst ratings. They only have 366,000 people watching that show. During the Jon Stewart years, it was over 2 million. Now it's down to 300,000. Seth Meyers, absolutely dreadful. He doesn't even have 1 million, 778,000. I mean, in network television, this is, you don't have to pay for it. It's there when you turn on your TV. You plug it in. That's a dreadful number. Greg Gutfeld on cable, which you do have to pay for, it has more than double the numbers of Seth Meyers. Jimmy Kimmel, 1.5 million, averaging. Also equally horrible.
Instead of debating him or even inviting him to the roast, Roger and Kelly simply took one glance at the performance and declared it to be a sitcom without a script. This is where it all begins to feel like a Netflix documentary called The Day. The clown cried for ratings. Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly are both dragging Jimmy Kimmel through the same mud puddle, one swinging like a blunt force caveman philosopher, and the other dissecting him like she's preparing for a high-stakes courtroom trial. A sermon with a laugh track, an empire built on irony, now selling sincerity at half price. You know something deeper is simmering beneath the laugh track, so let's begin with the straightforward but brutal equation: authenticity versus performance. The appeal of Joe Rogan's entire persona is that he never tries to be likable. Instead, he is unfiltered, raw, and occasionally insulting enough to make PR departments shiver. However, Kimmel has transformed himself into a human press release machine. His long-gone edgy, humorous spirit most likely exchanged it for a finer hairstyle and a picturesque view of the moral high ground.
They want to shut me down on being on McAfee. They want to shut me up from.
Well, that was the Kimmel thing, right?
Well, no.
Did you ever talk to that dude? Have you ever talked to him?
I've been on the show.
Yeah?
Years ago. Yeah.
Would you ever have a conversation with him in person?
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, they wanted me to be on the show in the summertime after I got traded.
Really?
There, obviously been some things that he had said about me that made me go, I don't know if I want to do that.
It's similar to seeing a former punk rocker arrive to a PTA meeting dressed in khakis and vehemently debate gluten-free cupcakes. He used to make fun of Hollywood, but now it's Hollywood, cloaked in branded virtue and infused with whatever the internet deems acceptable this week. The angle of Roger. Then there's Megyn Kelly, who appears as a corporate HR investigator who has discovered the receipts and doesn't care that Kimmel used to be funny. Instead, She's more interested in how thoroughly he's been repackaged and resold, believing that the change is too suspiciously convenient to be growth. Kimmel isn't changing. Instead, he's melting into a safe, inoffensive puddle of applause-seeking goo. It is more moral than it is personal development. In addition to criticizing the individual, they also reveal the system in which he currently lives, which leads us to the lost art of comedy. Botox looks clean, feels phony, and requires touch-ups every few months to remain relevant. Comedy has been sedated, neutered, and thrown into a branded merchandise store where every punchline must be pre-approved by the PR team and sanitized for your safety. Remember the times when comedians actually took chances and jokes made people uncomfortable squirm or even rethink their entire belief system?
I've got serious questions about whether any of this is true. I mean, in every job I've ever worked, I've had people who would jump through brick walls for me, and I can be a tough boss. I'm not an asshole, but I'll say, like, that was a shitty packet. Like, we need to do better. That was not okay. And my team loves me, and I love my team because we are all about putting out great work product. And I'm quick to compliment too. Like, what did he say? He basically said, "Are you okay? Seriously, do you need help?" That's causing people to lose their hair. People need to toughen up. Your workplace is not your
The conclusion is the same. We've replaced genuine laughter with audience applause, not for something funny, but for something ideologically correct. It's funny as a sermon, with Kimmel playing the self-righteous preacher reading from the gospel of whatever's trending and the media. Oh, it's not just enabling this, it's practically begging for more. The safer, more palatable, more elite-approved your content is, the more coverage you get, says Roger. Kelly notices this and raises a snell. Kimmel not only survives, but flourishes in this ecosystem because he is the model, the prototype, and the creator of a late-night host version 2.0, now with 50% less edge and 100% more moral superiority. Thus, we find ourselves at what can only be described as a cultural crossroads, with the Rogans and Kelly, who are flawed but fiercely independent, swinging wildly at the media bubble's cushioned walls, on the one hand, and the Kimmels of the world, grinning through carefully crafted monologues and rehearsed sincerity, floating gently on the surface of public approval like a duck in a $4,000 suit. However, this isn't just about one man losing his comedic backbone. It's about an entire entertainment industry that has forgotten how to laugh unless it's at pre-approved targets. It concerns satire that was once biting, but is now content to nibble gently like a tofu piranha.
So I don't think that conversation is a conversation that should be held in front of an audience in 5-minute chunks like they do on television.
Yeah.
That's a conversation that you have to let air out. I want to know why you think the way you think. Sit down with Jimmy. Why do you think the way you think? Why would you think that it's okay to say that it's a real simple thing? The people that have been vaccinated, you treat them. And the people that took horse goo, rest in peace, Wheezy. Really? Is that really?
It's about what happens when comedians stop making fun of the powerful and instead start having fun with them. Because when comedy forgets who it's supposed to be making fun of, the punchline isn't just weak. It's tragic. For a visual metaphor, picture this clown who used to flip tables sitting quietly at one while studio executives tell him how brave he is, and the audience claps frantically, pretending that what they just heard was comedy rather than confession. So, yes, Rogan swung the hammer, Kelly brought the scalpel, but it wasn't just about Kimmel. They were both analyzing the same thing: the artificially calculated and completely humorless soul of modern media. The worst part, which wasn't even funny, was where the punchline fell. When both Joe Rogan, the human Molotov cocktail, and Megyn Kelly, the PR assassin, circle the same target, you don't get an interview. Instead, you get an autopsy, and the subject isn't just Kimmel, it's everything he now represents. Late night. Used to feel like a bar at 2 a.m, chaotic, unpredictable, sometimes inappropriate, but always honest. Now, it feels like a team-building seminar hosted by someone who used to be fun, and if anyone is wondering where the spark went, Rogan and Kelly simply handed you the map.
Back in the day when I was on the prime time of Fox and you were on the prime time of CNN, a couple of hours after our shows ended, late night comics would come on, and they occasionally would make us laugh, Pierce. As you know, they've abandoned that game now, and they're just political operatives out there. Look at this.
Hey there. How are you doing? If you watch the show regularly, I'm guessing you're not doing great.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for
Just get over yourselves. Honestly, it's so pathetic.
The culture of phony growth, echo chambers, and the appearance of bravery. The notion that humor is only acceptable if it makes the appropriate people laugh. Not only did Rogan and Kelly humiliate Jimmy Kimmel by exposing the scaffolding supporting his entire stage, but they also did it with disappointment, sarcasm, and a well-earned side-eye. This type of mockery doesn't require a microphone drop because the silence that follows is louder. Therefore, the next time Kimmel gets up on his moral lifeguard chair to warn America about the dangers of mean tweets, perhaps stop and consider whether you're watching a comedian or a commercial for the new Kool-Aid, because the jokes used to be the main point, but are now merely the lecture's delivery system. If you're still laughing, Rogan and Kelly have one question at the roast that didn't require a stage, a punchline that spoke for itself, a false brand, and only 2 critics.